let's talk, and this is where I want you to kind of lead the conversation, Daniel. So you're
Oh
going
boy.
in, and this is something that we've seen a little bit at the ACO this weekend. So the ACO is this weekend, Atlantic City Open. Good luck to all our friends there, Richard, John, Nick, and all the rest, everyone else that's going.
Tons of
Those are
Brohammer dudes.
some Brohammer guys. Good luck, everyone that's going, and have fun. I shouted out a bunch of people that I knew that were going last week, so on Monday's show, but definitely looking forward to seeing how that event goes. But one of the things that is a little bit annoying, and I think me and you probably are less caring about the results, is that it's already old. It's already obsolete. The meta, the results, the outcomes, the all the theory crafting after all the meta adjustment
Yeah.
after this event is basically pointless because A, the Drukhari nerf is not in effect, and B, the AdMech book is not in effect. So between those two things, and then the Sisters book is hot on the heels. So between those three
Yep.
things, in about 3 weeks' time, the entire meta will have completely shifted, will be completely different. So this event, being the first kind of super major in the US, is essentially not meaningful in any way as far as determining the meta, the true meta. Now, obviously, there will be some learnings as far as, hey, what chaos? Someone's gonna ask what chaos list did well. What is fucking Naden running? What is, like, who's doing well with orcs? Those things obviously will still be applicable. But when it comes to literally the three best factions in the game at the moment, I think Admech, Sisters, and Drukhari, those are all getting a huge shakeup. And the TOs made a conscious decision not to adopt the FAQ, right? Which I
Right.
thought was a bad one in a lot of ways, and I'll get into my reasons. But what are your
Yep.
thoughts on it, Daniel? And what do you think? And you keep talking. I'm just gonna step off the camera for a sec.
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, my thought is, I don't think the TO has faith in his community. So a lot of players, their armies weren't greatly affected by the FAQ, so they're just going to bring the same list they're going to bring. The players who were affected by the FAQ, I promise you, 80 to 90% of them are not interested in playing something that's irrelevant. If it was the week before, that's one thing. But you have 3 weeks lead time. I get some armies you're going to have to change the paint style. You might even have to resubmit a new list, a new army, even. Like some people might have to do that. But honestly, you got to trust your player base and understand that the competitive players want the most current rules possible. And we're reasonable people. Like they understand 2 weeks is as close as you can get. If it's 13 days, we got to have the hard cutoff. But it was, I think, 3 weeks, right? They had a whole extra week. You got to just trust the player base, let the player base speak and tell you what they want. Like, again, 80% of the players there, their list probably didn't change much. Maybe they got a couple points down, a couple points up. You got to drop a single Terminator from a squad, or you get to add, I don't know, 50 points of Orc Boys. Like that, cool, great, whatever. Orc players have those Orc Boys painted up already. It's not a big deal. So I'm always a fan of play the most current rule set that is practically possible. And they didn't do that, and I think it's a big miss.
Yeah, and I agree with you. So first of all, I think 3 weeks or whatever they had is a long time in our game. I think there's a few bigger issues here which I think need to be fixed, not just by the TOs but by GW. First of all, in eighth, we had a reasonable expectation of when we'd get FAQs. Reasonable. Now whether or not they ever actually hit those deadlines is a whole saga in and of itself. But we knew. I think this was around the first chapter approved when eighth came out. They're like, guys, we're gonna do two FAQs a year, one in spring, one in fall. We're going to do a points update at chapter approved, whatever, and then maybe a small balance pass somewhere in the summer. So as TOs and tournament players, we knew that these things were happening. And guess what? A lot of TO tournaments that were in and around those dates. So they were like, hey, we think the FAQ is going to be out in March. So we're going to say for this event, that's say the second week of April, we're going to wait till the very last minute because we know that there's probably an FAQ coming in March. And so we want to make sure that the rules are as updated as possible. And so, although normally we'd like a 4-week cutoff, because we know that FAQ is going to drop within this kind of range, we're gonna let everyone know, hey guys, list submission is going to be like a week before, and we're going to try to do our best to use those rules. So Games Workshop hasn't done that. They haven't communicated when we're going to get this FAQ. In fact, they dropped it on like a random Tuesday or something like that with like very little like fanfare, very little announcement. So that was one thing. So that I think on a Games Workshop side is something that they need to get back to is like, hey, we want a roadmap. We want to know when these books are coming, when the FAQs are going to be coming, and what the plan is. Are we still getting a 2 week after FAQ? Because I haven't seen an FAQ for Book of Rust. And I know for a fact, talking to Tom Adriani, who's one of the guys that playtests, they submitted a set of FAQs for Book of Rust the same time as the Drukhari FAQ, right? On top of that, don't forget, the original Drukhari FAQ was very minimal. Everyone was like laughing. I don't know if you remember that came out. They're like, we were like, that's it. So
it was like the original Iron Hands FAQ.
Right. But the thing is like, Games Workshop did not decide the day before they dropped that FAQ that they're going to make Drukhari adjustments. I think they probably knew within a week of that adjustment or that book coming out that they probably are going to look at it. They should have come out and said it. They said, hey guys, we hear you. We know that there's some concerns about the power level of Drukhari. We're going to take a hard look at it. We're not going to make a move right away. We're not going to drop something tomorrow out of quickly. We want to see a little bit more data, maybe another few weeks of data. We want to talk to the playtesters. We want to think about a few different ideas, but we will be making some sort of tweaks to the book. We recognize it's fucked up. That's all it takes. That little bit of communication would have gone a long way. Now, as far as the go ahead.
To jump all the way back to earlier in the episode, if let's just say the Drukhari release, if that would have been the beta we had talked about, it was out for about 3 months. They didn't ham-fist the FAQ. They surgically popped the things that were the biggest issue and left the book at still an S+ level.
Which
but
I still think
it
it
was
is.
about absolutely. And so it took like 3 months to really hone in on the most abusive things, figure out what needs to be corrected, what needs to be taken away, and then now should be the official release, and we have a very strong, good book. So it all ties in. What we're seeing in practice is what all they would have to do is just communicate a little bit better, which is your main point, and make the rules more available. And then instead of tournament players being pissed off for 3 months and wanting to quit the game, you'd have had great, we're playtesting and our tournament scene is unaffected. And now we're releasing this very strong book that people are prepared for into the meta. Right. And it would have made a lot more sense.
And another thing it does is it takes away this. There's like a lot of, I guess, controversy around playtesters winning tournaments and being involved in tournaments. So it takes away that. It removes that.
Oh, 100%.
It completely removes, like, and look, I don't actually really believe that, like, Brian Pullen or some of the UK playtesters, like Stephen Box, like, all of a sudden, they have these massive advantages. I don't believe that. The only advantage I think they normally get is that they get a jumpstart on the purchasing of models and painting of models.
Yeah, they'll own the models, and that's about it.
And that can obviously, if you care about having like a high standard army, that can definitely cause, like, especially because, hey, like, I bought a Mutal Vortex Beast. You're hearing it now, guys. They're gonna all sell out because they're gonna be so good in the new book. But like, if I was a playtester and all of a sudden I bought my 3 and then they sold out, this, like, as soon as that preview for the Mutal Vortex Beast came out, they sold out. Now none of the other top players can get them, and I have my 3 already, and I'm gonna go clean up my tournaments. That's a problem too. But when it comes to actually like the game part, like do I think that Stephen Box or Brian Pullen or Brad Chester? Now, Brad Chester's just a really good player. There's a reason he went to the LVO finals last year, right? He's an incredibly good player. He plays a lot. Now, do I think Sean Naden, who's not a playtester and is basically like in the same area and they like have a podcast together, do I think he probably gets an advantage or advanced info? 1,000% he does. There's no way you can convince me that Sean Naden or some of the Art of War guys, which I know, don't get stuff. Like, that's just, I don't believe it. I don't believe you if you tell me that. If you say that, like, if you say Brad Chester, who's on the Art of War, never tells any of the Art of War guys anything advanced about anything that he learns about playtesting, I will call you a liar. Now, Richard's told me that they've never asked for it. He's very political in the way he said it to me. He says, we've never asked Brad for anything. And I believe that too, but you sure as shit, fucking Brad's probably told them stuff voluntarily. Okay, now that's a whole nother issue. Let's get to the so I think it solves that issue, but let's get to the actual TO part. Ultimately, they could have polled the players, right? And I think if you polled the 256 players, I think the majority of them, because they're competitive and a lot of them are traveling, would probably poll 70 to 80%. Yes, let's use the new rules. Let's use the new FAQ. Because guess what? Anyone that's not Drukhari, which is the majority, want the new rules. and then
A
and
thousand
then
percent.
right, so almost that's probably like 90% of the base, because that they're non-Drukhari players, right? And then for a lot of the other players, a lot of the clarifications, a lot of the cleanup, that's generally, maybe the chaos players might say no because of the warp time nerfs, but that probably is a wash, right? The Drukhari say no, and the chaos players say no. That's maybe 20% of your field, right? Almost everyone else is probably universally yes. But even the chaos players, I'd rather play Drukhari now with the nerfs than with my old warp time and not the nerfs, because I still have a better chance. I
Absolutely.
still have a better chance post warp time nerf than I do pre warp time nerf. So I think
Yeah,
overall
because
your
my
players want it
beast and hurdle
too.
didn't go up.
Yeah, and your players want it too. Um,
Hmm.
and I think as a tournament circuit, we need to be more flexible and say, hey, look, this is a risk of playing. Like, look, just like when you buy the new flavor of the month thing, so all the people that bought liquefiers, who I have no sympathy for, are now nerfed. They knew going into that there's a risk that this would happen. No one's like, oh my god, I can't believe liquefiers got nerfed. What an insane thing. No one saw that coming. So you had all these players go out and buy liquefiers, spend money, whatever, and the liquefiers got nerfed. Just the same, you have all these players that are going to buy tickets to tournaments, plane tickets, hotels, and there might be something that comes along that also causes them hardship, whether it's that, or causes them to like feel like they've wasted money because now maybe their super broken army is not as good, and now they feel like they wasted money. Either way, that happens. So no matter what, there's always going to be someone that is put out in a bad place. But when you want to play competitively, this is the cost of that. This is part of that. This is just like I have to have a WYSIWYG mod army that is battle ready to get my points. Just like I have to have my army list in time. These are all parts of that. When you sign up to go to a tournament, this is what you're essentially agreeing to, that these kinds of things could happen. Now, do I want them to happen? No, but it's something that you just have to agree. You just have to understand it could happen. And a lot of these players who are like, oh, crocodile tears, like, poor me, they changed my list 2 weeks before, what am I going to do? It's like, dude, like, figure it out. Like, this is the risk of playing tournaments. And if you don't like it, if you're not willing to take those risks, hey, guess what? You don't have to play in tournaments. It's not a forced thing. So
Yeah. And so a little bit of a add-on discussion to that. I think part of the issue is we have Games Workshop trying to pick up the competitive scene and say, we're going to standardize it, we're going to give you the missions, we're going to do all of this stuff. It comes back to the communication. We don't have a release date. We don't know when these things are going to drop. Like Star Wars Legion, I think is probably one of the most competitively balanced games. My favorite thing that they do is they say, our release date for this unit is July 17th. There's a 2-week period from the release. They are just illegal. You cannot use them, even though it's released for 2 weeks. And then everybody knows on this date, I have to deal with this unit. You
yeah,
have the rules in advance. You know when it's going to be. Their Asmodee or whatever, they announce a month in advance, we're releasing this unit on this date. 2 weeks from that, it's legal. You have plenty of time, so you don't ever have this issue in Legion because there's communication.
right.
40K, you have to understand, you don't get that communication from Games Workshop. So if you want to play competitively, you want to be on the edge of everything, you want the most competitive advantage possible, you're without perfect knowledge, your only other option is adaptability. And it's true in the game, it's true around the game. So be adaptable. Tournament organizers, be adaptable. Players, be adaptable. Guess what? If it gets nerfed, you can't get your stuff painted in time. That sucks. Play something else. Like I have lists due in 2 weeks for an entire Sisters of Battle army I didn't even know I needed until like this week. Either I get it done or I don't. I accept that. That's part of playing this game competitively. And
Right.
guess what? I'm going to get it done because I've been playing competitively for so long. I know what it takes, and that's what I'm going to do because that's my priority in this game.
Yeah, and like the funny thing is, and if you really think about it, the players who are actually in the running to win that event. So let's say at ACO, right? 200 was it 256 players? Let's say of
Yeah.
that 256 players, there's maybe 8 to 10 people that are attending that have an actual legitimate chance of winning that event. And then there's 240-ish players that have zero chance of winning. They're gonna go five and they're not. So there's the top eight. So let's say the top eight, right? You have your top eight, 8 to 12 players that could potentially make the top eight that could potentially win the event. Then you have everyone else. Now, for those 8 to 12 players, I bet you 100% of them want to be playing in the most up-to-date meta and would actually care that the games and tournament that they're playing where is the most up-to-date meta. I bet you 100% of them would want to be playing with the new FAQ. Now, the other
They want a
240...
new Sisters book.
Yeah. Now, the other
They would want a
240...
new Sisters book, which
Yeah.
comes out that weekend.
Exactly. Of the other
Go ahead.
240, you guys are not going to win anyways. So, like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just being honest. You're not going to win anyways, which means relax. If there's a change and your list is not as good, hey, don't sweat it, man. You weren't going to win anyways. Maybe instead of going 5-1, you go 4-2. Okay, cool. But like, you know, that sucks. But like, it's not a win. It's not like your event that you were going to win is now ruined because of this thing. You were not going to win. You're going to go 4-2 or 5-1 or 3-3 or whatever. And now that your record might change a game, and that sucks. But you know, make adjustments to your list. So I just, for me, it's like, and then here's the big, to put it all together. There's two things that I really don't like about this. So for me, there's a big difference between FAQ and errata. So the errata is, and just to be clear on the audience, the errata is Games Workshop has gone and changed the writing of the rules in the rule book. So there's a bunch of blue writing in the, we just call it the FAQ, but it's actually two parts. It's an FAQ, which is frequently asked questions, clarifications, and then errata. The errata is like, hey, replace this with this. This was how it used to be written. This is how it's now written to be clear. But the FAQ is like, hey, we have a question. Can you answer the question? And a lot of times that doesn't mean that they changed any rules. So in the case of like, say for instance, there's probably lots in there I can find. There's like lots of times where someone just asks a question. They're like, hey, how does this work? That's
Tome of Malkador, the psychic Space Marines. That's
right.
a
So
great
Tome of
example.
Malkador, it's like, this is the way that it's written, and we're not changing anything. We're just clarifying the way that it should work so that you're not playing the rule wrong. The rule that already exists that we're not changing. I think those should be in effect because essentially they're not actually changing anything that didn't already exist. They're just saying, and now if I'm a TO and that comes up in a game, say a sticky situation where someone asks that question, am I supposed to pretend that I don't know the answer? Or if I had said originally I had ruled it one way, and I know that's wrong now, should I ignore that? Should I pretend that doesn't exist? Like how that's so stupid. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And then on top of that, so the second part of that ridiculousness is the ACO went and issued their own FAQ for Drakari 2 days before and made the Drakari players change their list. Like what?
And were there restrictions on how they changed the list? Because the lists were live. Everyone could read everything. So I'm a Drakari player. Suddenly I have perfect knowledge of the meta. So I'm just going to, you know what? I found out I didn't like this aspect. Maybe I wanted more Chronos because I see X. So they can completely change their list because they have more competitive knowledge than everyone else. It completely destabilized the competitive integrity of that event.
So like if you're going to not only like, and the funny thing is that FAQ that they put out was not covered in the GW FAQ. It was like there's some other path that they got there. But you'd think that they would be like, okay, well, at this point, everyone can just change their lists. And we're just going to allow the FAQ. Like, fuck it.
Yeah.
So,
but doing it 2 days before, some people might have already started driving. So it's like their army's loaded up and they're already gone. Like,
yeah,
if you're
totally
going to be wishy-washy as soon as it comes out. Don't like, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. I'm punting. 2 days before. You know what? I thought about this and now we're going to do it. Like, no, dude, you already made